Hey Shakers, and welcome back to another episode of Worth Your Salt, the podcast that's here to supercharge your marketing in the health and wellness space. I'm Jennifer Orechwa, StoryBrand certified coach, and over the past 2 decades, my team and I have tested, iterated, and figured out what it takes to market and grow so you don't have to. Now I'm here to help you apply the marketing systems that truly work. At Salt Marketing, we're all about helping wellness practitioners like you build trust, authority, and a nonstop flow of clients. So if you're ready to take your practice to the next level, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Today, I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend Sharon Otaguro. Sharon and I met in a mastermind that we're both part of, and she is the visionary founder of Ohanapreneurs, which is such a great philosophy. Sharon is also a wealth and lifestyle business coach, and she honestly just brings aloha, heart, and business savvy to every entrepreneur that she partners with. So after rising to a C-suite role before the age of 30, opening 5 multi-million-dollar med spas and overseeing 8-figure operations, Sharon walked away from corporate success to confront the burnout she witnessed in the healing space. So drawing on her third-generation Japanese Hawaiian roots and deep experience in hospitality and med spa leadership, she now supports wellness business owners in scaling with structure and soul. Through her signature Ohanapreneur framework, Sharon teaches practitioners how to build a resilient family-style culture using systems that blend clarity and accountability with the warmth of aloha. As a certified life coach, NLP master trainer, and host of the highly rated Ohanapreneurs podcast, Sharon guides purpose-led leaders in integrating operational excellence, energy, rhythms, and authentic communication to grow businesses that honor both profit and people. So today, Sharon and I are going to be talking about what it means to be an Ohanapreneur and how to build a culture that is family-centered and filled with aloha. Sharon, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Jennifer, it's such an honor. I'm so excited to speak to your audience and serve.
So I wanted to first to ask you, can you share a little bit about how growing up in a third generation Japanese family in Hawaii shaped your values around community and care?
Absolutely. So, Jennifer, I don't know if you have studied Hawaiian history, but Hawaii is the 50th state. So, it has an interesting and timely message for me growing up because my grandparents were actually on the boat coming from Kauai, one of the neighbor islands, to Honolulu, the main island, as Pearl Harbor was being bombed. And the Japanese were immigrants into Hawaii. So, although I often get asked, am I Hawaiian? Because Asians are one of the dominant races in Hawaii. Actually, I'm not. And we were those sugar plantation workers. While at the same time, because there's so many of us there, and it was during America, making us into a state, it feels like we are Hawaiian. And actually, the Hawaiian culture is what we call a mixing pot. So there's such a blend of different cultures. It's part of what identifies us. Having all those different elements of being in a state that lost its sovereignty, having different races that both identify as Hawaiian but also as different, and then actually eventually leaving. And now I live on the mainland in Florida has given me such a sense of how all of that blends to create what's uniquely you and the different parts of you in terms of culture, cultural roots, in terms of what a community truly is. And so I actually say now, yes, I am Hawaiian because it's kind of like, yes, I am American. It's about agreeing to the tenets and the values of that place that you are from that makes you or made you a Hawaiian back even when there was chiefs. So lots of different elements came into it, Jennifer, but really what community means to me based on all of that background is shared values, fractional responsibility. So does every person in that community agree and participate in what the community stands for, and then recognizing and celebrating differences?
I love that, and it's such a beautiful blend of cultures. I lived in Hawaii for a number of years, and the Japanese influence is very strong. But I love what you said about blending all of those together, and that makes you who you are. So that's a really nice philosophy. So but you even with all of that background, you rose to the C-suite in the spa industry before you were 30 years old. So what motivated you to move from that sort of corporate success to coaching others?
So going from corporate, which is such an amazing culture, at the same time having a very linear path to entrepreneurism, it all happened because of my brother. So my brother, who's no longer with us, he actually was an alcoholic. He was the most loyal person that you could ever meet, and he was my older brother by 1 year. I was sitting across the dinner table from him one evening, and we're talking about life and different things that were happening, and I was sort of chastising him, right? The little sister chastising him about his habits and what he was doing with his life and where it was going. And he looks at me and he says, "Sharon, you're an addict too." And the inner voice, the little 5-year-old girl, 8-year-old girl said, like, "I know you are, but what am I?" Right? And he said, "Sharon, you're addicted to work." And it was a punch in the gut because I looked back at all of the sacrifices, all the choices I had made in corporate. And that's how I rose so quickly. I was the youngest spa director. And I actually covered 25% of all revenues for the spas in Hilton America in one property. So I had rose very fast because I was hardworking. I made a lot of sacrifices. I was single, so I could travel at the drop of a hat. And all those sacrifices, what did it mean? Right? It was so that I could wear the feather in my cap, but I was not spending time with my family. I was not making the choices for my future, my legacy. And it was secondary gain. So I hugged him, and I, from that moment, decided to carve my own path. And I would say, Jennifer, there's such a value in having both elements, right? And you and I talked about this before, having that cultural structure that trains you, but also the value, not the time trade off. So, what I do now is for results and for value, not just for the hours that I put in. And it's so much more rewarding to be able to make those transformations for other business owners because of the freedom that I can enjoy. So, interesting story.
So, talk to me a little bit about this concept of ohana. Where did this come from? I mean, obviously, that's part of the Hawaiian culture. It's a very strong to the point where people have buildings where they call it an ohana, where their family can come stay and live with them. But tell me a little bit about how that concept influenced you and how you came around to this idea of Ohanapreneur.
Absolutely. So, Ohana, and I'm so glad that Lilo and Stitch has just became popular again with the live action movie, right? But if you
Yep,
know
yep.
anything about that movie, Ohana means family. It's a Hawaiian word that means family. But actually, if you're from Hawaii or as you sort of dive into it, it's not just your family by blood, it's your chosen family or community. So, and as you look back at Hawaiian history, the Hawaiian chieftains or ali'i, they would take fractional responsibility or responsibility of an ecosystem. They called them ahupua'as, but it was land division, almost like a watershed from uh, the mountain to the sea. And each chieftain would divide the land up in that way, and that was their community or their ohana. So it was self-sustaining because the people that were the foresters that would build the houses down to the fishermen, everyone's role was critical for that ecosystem to be self-sustaining. So when I say ohana, it's not just your family by blood, and it's not just your friend groups. It is truly your community that you are responsible for in physical, mental, emotional well-being, and they as well. So everyone that's part of that has that fractional responsibility back to yourself. And then coming from corporate and into entrepreneurship, that's what I found was the biggest Achilles heel or the biggest mark of failure in both systems, was when there wasn't that mutual care, responsibility, respect, and collaboration that needs to exist for a system to truly be self-sustaining. And that is what Ohanapreneur means, is someone that has a group of people that they are fractionally responsible for. They're clear of their role, their responsibility. They take that commitment to, and then within that, then can do business better because they're doing it together.
And I know your whole philosophy really emphasizes community over isolation, but you also talk a lot about questions over answers. So, why are those principles kind of foundational to your approach?
Because a single person cannot create a system, right? And a true success in any system comes because of those connections. So the one cannot exist without the many, and vice versa. And from a questioning standpoint, that's what creates awareness. If you don't question where you want to be and where you've been, then you cannot truly have clarity about where you are. If you don't have a community where questions are part of that culture and therefore reflection and growth, then you're not moving. You're stagnant. You are e- even if you're a success, it's one of those one hit wonders, right? So unless you have curiosity, unless you have courage to ask the questions, and unless you have people around you that will reflect, your brilliance as well as your gaps, you will not be as great as you can be and as you're meant to be.
I love that idea. The wholeness that comes from having that type of community around you. So I want to talk about your tagline: healers sharing aloha and entrepreneurs being authentic. Tell me a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So, from health and wellness, right? So, healers, if aloha as a word, first of all, let's break it down. So, I'm an NLP person, Jennifer. So you'll hear a lot of different distinctions about words, but healers are aloha in that the word aloha is a sharing of energy, right? And that's really what healers do, is they create wholeness within a system, usually the body. But if we don't have that, again, self-sustaining rhythm and cycle, then we can't truly heal because we will burn out. And I've burned out more than twice. I say 2.5 times because I stopped myself from actually burning out. But if healers share without expectation, then the energy exchange is so much more free. At the same time, if they don't replenish themselves through connection to the land, through their own self care rituals, then they're not truly able to share aloha, because that hospitality is, it's only one way and you're going to go empty. So
Mm,
that's really the elements of it, and then how we translate that into how we lead our lives and we work through is why then we become self guided leaders, why we then get into the world, right? Because otherwise it's just in our head, or it's a one to one versus a one to many aspect. So it's really the concept of that is start with yourself and then heal from your overflow and then create leadership through that system that you've developed.
I love that. All right, we're going to take a quick sponsorship break right now. When we come back, I want to chat about what a personal operating system is and the role that the Ohanapreneur mindset plays in it. We'll be right back. Does marketing your wellness practice ever feel like you're trying to build IKEA furniture without the instructions? You know you have all the pieces, a great offer, happy clients, and a mission that matters, but no matter how hard you work, it never quite clicks into place. That's because you're missing the blueprint, the system that takes you from scrambling to scaling. Inside the Salted Edge membership, you get immediate on-demand access to our robust 5-part masterclass. It's designed to help you fix the exact piece of your marketing puzzle that's holding you back whenever you need it. You'll master how to attract the right leads so you're not chasing the wrong ones, how to convert those prospects into paying clients with confidence, how to create raving fans who actually market for you, and how to automate so you're not working 24/7. Best of all, how you can measure success so that you can scale with certainty. And the best part is, it's all included inside the Salted Edge membership. You can jump in and get help exactly where you need it, right when you need it. So if you're ready to finally stop guessing and start growing, head to saltmarketing.co/edge to find growth with ease. The Salted Edge, because clarity always beats chaos. saltmarketing.co/edge. Ikomo mai, we are back here on the Worth Your Salt podcast with Sharon Otaguro of Ohanapreneur. And so Sharon, what does being an Ohanapreneur mean in practical terms? And I'm thinking for wellness practitioners who work with family, both those that we get through birth and real family, and those we choose.
How does Ohanapreneur work in tactical terms? So that's a
Yeah.
great question, Jennifer. So it's, how are you doing life and business intentionally, leveraging the people around you, right? So the one is the energy, and we talked about that a lot in the first part of it. The other is the systems that you really need to employ. So do you have a system for the relationships that you choose, and perhaps some of the ones that you don't choose. That's what an Ohanapreneur is doing not just your business but also your life deliberately, intentionally. So do you have a relationship with your parents that's intentional, or is it reactionary? Do you create an agenda, and I'm talking about the positive aspects of the word agenda, of what do I want out of this? And it really struck me when I heard questions around numbers. Specifically, how many vacations do you have left with your parents? Right? How many summers do you have left with your kids? And then that number becomes so, so small, right? So if we don't have an agenda of how do I want to intentionally craft a positive relationship, a positive outcome, so that my memories are by choice, so that my experiences are memorable and meaningful, then we're like that Adam Sandler movie Click, and we've just gone through life, fast forwarded, and we don't even remember a single one of those relationships, right? So have those intentional experiences with your family, then ex- expand that into your team, because we always talk about the service profit chain in hospitality of happy customers, right, equal happy profits. But what we forget is, well, happy owner creates happy team members, creates happy customers, creates happy profits, right? So if you as the owner are walking in so frustrated, so overwhelmed, so resentful to your team because you have to pay payroll, how do you expect to create a positive environment for them? Are you intentional about that? How you then communicate for your team members so they understand your intentions and then share that with their clients. And then how does that translate to a profitable business? So Ohanapreneur is, how do we have intentional, mutually responsible relationships? Then how do you extend that into your business to business relationships? How do you extend that to your vendor relationships, right? So it's really about the system and the intention on all of the people that you surround yourself with. And how does that bridge to what you want for yourself and your family?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that personal operating system. What does that include? How does it differ from like a standard business operating system?
It's so simple, and yet it's funny. We just did our quarterly event, you and I, right, Jen? And um, it was I did a talk around this, and it was surprising. And then I came back home and did the same talk. How no matter if someone is just starting out in business or they're multi eight figures in business, the same challenges are there if we don't have our own personal rituals, rhythms, goals, right? So, have you written your, I like to say, retirement speech for yourself? And therefore, act intentionally, have an operating system to achieve that, right? So, you should have a sense of the systems that bring out the best in you. And what does that mean? That means, do you know what you want at the end of the year, at the end of your career, at the end of your life? And based on those accomplishments, who's at the retirement party? What are the things they're saying about you? Is it accomplishments? Is it traveling the world? Is it, planting other family members? My grandma actually was talking about Ohanapreneur. At one point, she made more than the governor of Hawaii, and she just ran a small little restaurant business. However, she also died poor, poor in money, but rich in friends. But her life was all about generosity. So she lived her life. And then yet others may think, well, that wasn't a successful life, right? So are you intentionally creating your retirement speech? And then how do you backtrack, reverse engineer your goals into your daily habits and rituals? Because we are our habits. So, what does that mean? Well, how early do you wake up? Right? If you want to have a healthy life, what is the food that you're putting into your body? Because we have this one body. And if we're not feeding it well, how do we expect it to last us for 80, 90 years? They say you have 1,000 priorities as a business owner or a health and wellness practitioner until you have a health issue, and then you have one priority, right? So your
Mhm.
personal operating system is, how do you know what your goals are? And then how do you set your personal rhythms to honor that goal? How many hours of sleep do you need? What type of food do you need? What type of relationships do you need? And how are you feeding your brain, your heart, your body, right? So the growth aspects of it. And it ties into, Jennifer, I think what you also talk about, right, is then how do you take that and craft that story to magnetize what you do, because people know what your values are, people know what your personal systems are, and then honor that. And that helps you with your boundaries too. There's so many healers that have no boundaries, right? Because they don't know where to draw that line. I heard this, I know we're meandering a bit, but I heard this phrase of, a boundary is where I can love you without condition. Because once I step beyond that, then there's resentment, right? So if you're clear about that, then you can communicate that. But most people aren't even clear. How many meetings can I take in a day before I feel drained? How often can I say yes to you before I start to resent, right? If you know that, then you can communicate that, or you can set up your automated systems to do that. And then how do you communicate that, which is your genius of what you do.
I love everything you're saying, that, and the through line on all of this is really intentionality. Like the story about your grandmother, like hit me in all the feels, because like somebody else might look at her life from the outside and say that was not successful, but to her, it was exactly what she wanted it to be. So that's amazing. So you have a leadership model that includes purpose, process, people, profit, presence. How does all of that tell me a little bit about that? Tell me how that reinforces this idea of
Absolutely.
Ohanapreneur.
Again, all about intention, right? So it starts with that first P of purpose. Do you know why you get up every day? Do you know why you chose that career? And if not, find out, right? Because it can be as simple as to pay my bills. But without that, even, then it takes you 10 times as long to get out of bed. Now you're fighting with yourself. And NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. So language pattern resets. So if you're fighting with yourself just to get out of bed, how much energy do you have left for everything else in your life? So that's the purpose, right? And then the process. I used to believe, Jennifer, that it was people first, and I still sort of play with this because they're so closely aligned, Ohanapreneur. But a business can survive, and we learned this from Ryan Dice together, but a business can survive having mediocre people if it has an excellent process. But a business that has excellent people and no process will soon lose those great people, right? So they're equally important, and the order is then process. So do you have your personal operating system? Do you have your business operating system? How does that, as simple as getting up, getting to work, change everything for you? And some leadership systems that have been proven over time is, we don't talk about religion, but the church system, proven over time as successful in growth, right? And consistency. The military system, great leadership model, right? So how do you have the simple process that's going to get you to your goals? Then the people, who is around you? Are they the positive or the negative people? Right. And then from there, then there's a lot more P's that can play around, from performance, from place, from profits, but ultimately it should lead to abundance. So it is purpose, then process, then people, then it is profit, performance, and so much more.
So I kind of want to draw back on your experience. So you're obviously running multi-million dollar spas, like common operational pitfalls that you might have noticed, and what sort of systems that you put into place helped overcome those sorts of things.
The first, I know everybody's talked about this, but the first is communication. So this is the biggest challenge that so many leaders, business owners have. And it's actually because they miss that first step of purpose. So med spa owners, I'm actually helping a med spa in Denver open in the fall. They had a beautiful dream, and the first thing they had for me was their equipment order, right? And I think you've talked about this in previous episodes, but it's that multi six-figure investment, because they tell you that your lasers and your equipment is your ATM machine for med
Hmm.
spa. Well, guess what? It is not. What is the purpose of that? The purpose of the equipment, the facility, everything is to help you shine your brand, right? So you need Jennifer to craft that story for you, but you have to have the purpose of why am I in business first? Then from there, and that's the biggest pitfall. Then the next is the communication. How are you communicating that? You need Jennifer for marketing. And you need, it's true. I mean, I love your system and everybody has to listen to it, but how do you have consistent messaging for what makes you unique? You have your pager process, right? And so are you telling your message? Then are you telling your message internally? That's the next big pitfall. You have to be selling and marketing to your team, yourself every day. So I truly believe that it starts with you. You got to make yourself happy, know your purpose, then your team, then your clients, and then everything else falls into play, right? Otherwise, you're fighting it. We'll talk about island analogies or water analogies, like you're fighting the tides, right? Instead of just creating a one-way flow that's continuously reinforcing you when the profits come back to you. So it is not having a purpose for everything you do. You, whatever marketing you choose, purpose for the location you've chosen, purpose for the teams that you have, not a warm body, right? Hiring the teams that are aligned with your values. Then how are you communicating that message? And then how are you being accountable? So that, and that's the third piece, is accountable to me is the ability to account for the activity that's happened. So do you have reports? Even if you don't have reports, can you tell the story? I was profitable, I was not. Here's why. If you can't, get someone, the who, not how, but you have to be able to tell the story and be accountable because you know what happened. And from there, then you can start to optimize. But if you don't have those things, the purpose, the people, the process, and then the accountability or the ability to look back and see what happened, you will have a lot harder time if you succeed. And that is why the success ratio for startups is, 95% failure in the first 10 years.
Yeah, which is difficult. So, talk a little bit about that inner compass and outer confidence. What does that play in terms of a role in being an Ohanapreneur?
Clarity is, I think it's becoming more widely spread in its importance nowadays, but that inner compass is, am I going in the right direction? Right? Because if you don't have your compass for what's right and what's wrong, how can you communicate that? How can you build a brand? How can you build a scalable anything if you don't have that inner knowing of I'm on the right track? And it doesn't have to be fine tuned before, as you're starting out. If you're just starting in your med spa business, it's a wide highway, right? So you can go and hit the bumper guards and change lanes and all of those things, but what is my direction? And then as you get more and more down the road, then it'll narrow, you'll get more refined, you'll add textures, hills, whatever it is. I like analogies, but do you have that right and wrong compass? Do you know which direction you're heading? And then that then becomes the people again, who's gonna follow you along that path. Then the outer confidence. Confidence, I got this from a colleague of mine, and it's resonated so deeply. Confidence is faith-based evidence. So you build faith in yourself, in your brand, by the steps that you take that prove it was the right choice, right? So perfect example, marketing. If you test one ad, if you're testing 100 ads, you don't know what is right or wrong because you don't have enough criteria. But choosing a certain small sample set will allow you to test and then see which one is the better direction, then the best direction, right? And if you don't know what you're doing in a certain area of your business or your life, get a coach, have an expert, like again Jennifer, but that's going to build your outer confidence. So know your direction internally and then prove it to yourself with every step and make it as simple as possible in terms of your steps. So what is my next step, right? What do I need to do next that I have a good idea is going to be the right step? And then can I build my confidence, because do I know if that was right or wrong? If not, back up, reset your compass, then try again and affirm that building of confidence.
I love that. And I love the analogy that you gave. It just makes so much sense. We have so many clients who they're just doing all the things. And it's impossible to build confidence when you are throwing all that spaghetti at the wall and trying to figure out what sticks and you're just doing it over and over again. Being able to stay the course and having that inner compass saying, this is the direction I need to go in and I'm going to focus on with intentionality again. So what makes this industry so uniquely suited for this Ohanapreneur approach and that personal operating system that you talk
Ooh,
about?
that's a great question. So the Ohanapreneur system is a combination of uh, uh, energy, which is healing work and wellness work, and even in med spas, it's confidence. So it's that sort of intangible emotion, right? And I believe this is in the story brand framework, but is you sell emotion. That's what I believe sales is, right? So do you know what emotion you sell? I sell Aloha. And it resonates back to me in so many different ways of people just say, "Oh, Sharon, I just feel so comfortable around you. I feel so welcome." To me, that all is other words for aloha, right? So that's the emotion I sell.
Mhm.
So when you talk about why is Ohanapreneur great in the med spa industry, is because we're selling confidence, we're selling image, we're selling identity. And the identity of an Ohanapreneur is someone that works through relationships with others. So that's customer service. How do you build that long-term relationship? Are you creating recurring revenue with memberships in your med spas? Do you have partnerships with your vendors? So it's all about, you know, the identity of who you are as a med spa. What are you selling? What emotion? And then how are you leveraging those relationships? And the wellness and med spa industry is growing so tremendously fast, right? Double digit growth. It's $1 trillion industry. And yet there's all of these things that could go wrong because it's growing so fast. So, there's the GLP-1 issues of what's changing and access. There's which laser actually works and is going to burn your face, like all these other factors. So, if you don't have that intention in the process to discern the proper relationships, you will spend so much time, money, and dilution of your brand, if you don't have an
Mhm.
Ohanapreneur aspect of how you're doing business. Not to mention, a lot of your practitioners are very highly paid, right? And the client puts their trust a lot of times in that practitioner, not necessarily in the brand. So if you are not super intentional about your brand messaging, about the relationships that you develop with your team because you're a values led company, it is so hard to keep that good staff, the good clients, all because you didn't have that system in place.
That's brilliant. And we've been talking a lot lately about building that personal brand as the founder, the owner, the practitioner, because it attracts the right people to you, not just your clients, but also your team, and really leaning into that personal brand idea.
Right? There's a med spa every on every corner now, right? So how do you craft that core audience? And it is through that personal brand. Absolutely, as you said.
So much competition. All right, Sharon, it's time for another quick break. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to the Worth Your Salt podcast, and today I'm talking with Sharon Otaguro of Ohanapreneur about how you can build a family culture that will help you scale your business with Aloha. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so be sure to join us over on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook, and let us know how you're building a culture as an Ohanapreneur. We're back. And so before the break, Sharon, we were talking about personal operating systems, personal brands, and how wellness practitioners, especially med spa owners, can find balance that actually helps them grow. So I want to dig into what it takes to build that personal operating system that you talk about. So, for listeners who have a family run practice, we see a lot of this where, one member of the family is the practitioner with their sleeves rolled up, the other might be an advisor or running operations. So, what kind of first steps can they take, like right now, to start building that personal operating system? Where do they begin?
Begin with clarity. So, what is my role? What is your role? right? Well, and actually, one step further. So, again, having that personal brand clarity for the organization itself. Do you know what is your vision, mission, values? If you don't, I know it seems cheesy, but you are limiting yourself in the positioning that you can capture in the profits. Think about it in this way, right? A general doctor, general practitioner doctor can help everyone, but a neurosurgeon can charge this 10 times more and also still help everyone. So, what are those specialties? So, you have to have that vision for your business and your company first. And then that personal operating system is, what is my role and what are the three things that I am responsible for? Once those are agreed upon, especially between two partners that have multiple roles, perhaps, at home and then in the business, you got to respect those boundaries. So this is my area. You can contribute an opinion, but I have the final say. Do I have the budget for that? Well, first of all, did we put a budget together? If not, make sure you do, and then allocate it. But then that is my budget. I have independence of decision for those, right? So clarity of role, responsibility, and also team members. So when we have family run practices, oftentimes everybody reports to everybody, and therefore there's nobody that reports to anybody.
Mhm.
So having more than 5 team direct reports for one leader is challenging for effectiveness. There's a formula called the Dunbar formula that dictates, or has been proven as effective for how many individuals any one person can effectively manage. So 1 to 5, and then it goes to 15, and then it goes to 50, and then it goes above that. So what that means is you can manage more than 5, but you will have less of a deep relationship with them, right? So how can you utilize systems to make sure you have communication? Um, and then if one person reports to more than one leader, then they're not going to report to anybody, or they're not going to be as effective as they can be. So have the clarity of your role, have the clarity of who reports to whom, and separate that if you can. If not, then at least separate the tasks that you're responsible for with that person, so they're clear. Well, I go to payroll with this leader, and I go to scheduling with this leader, right? So make it very, very clear. Then from there, um, have the KPI. So have those numbers that will show that you are successful or not successful within your role as your operating system. And the average person can only manage 5 plus or minus 2 priorities, right? So if you have more than 5, I don't even like to go to 7 when it's in the wellness field, because there's so much to do. So if you have more than 5 top goals that you're trying to achieve that's responsible in your role, it's time to hire or delegate, right? That is going to give you so much clarity of what your role is, what your responsibilities are, who reports to you, so who your team is, and then you'll be able to see your gaps. One great for leaders reference that I like to drop is the book, The Best Small Business in the World. The Best Small Business in the World is great for dictating which systems are going to help you with clarity to make sure you don't overwhelm yourself, and you know how to build that personal system tactically. But ultimately, again, it's going to go back to, what is the clarity of purpose? What is the numbers? So purpose, then I put people in, right? So who reports to you? Then what are those numbers? And then what process? How are you going to get there, right? The final piece I'll add is set a time limit around it. So our work will expand to the time that you allot it, right? So you have to put a time constraint around it, and it should be short enough that you can see yourself on the other side of it, but long enough that you can actually do the work that you're meant to do within that project, right? Typically it's 90 days, and I have a program, it's called the Best 90, but beyond 90 days, our attention sort of drifts, right? But within 90 days, it's enough time to get work done, but also know what's going to be on the other side of that.
So, talking about, setting up yourself for success, time bound, critical accountability bullets, all of those things are part of that. But you also have an assessment that helps identify
Yep.
people's the gaps in their businesses. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we just have a Ohanapreneur clarity assessment, and it goes through the 4 Ps so that you understand where's the gap in your business, and then have a few strategies and tips of what to do about it based on what comes out of there. So, do you have clarity of purpose? Do you have a process, a predictable process for the critical areas of your business? So, your marketing, your sales, your recruitment and retention, your lifetime client experience. Then, um, then who are the people? And I've mentioned a few of them in this conversation, but who are the people that we rely on for your support, for getting the work done, for your growth as well? And then what are your profits is really the last piece that we look at in the assessment is where is your profit? Where's your wealth coming from? And I talk about wealth. You'll see it in the show notes, but it's WELLTH. So it's not just your financial profits, but also your lifestyle profits as well.
Absolutely. All right. So if we want to get started with you, you're clearly an amazing coach. If we want to get started with you or even just take that assessment, where should we go?
It is my website as my name, so SharonOtaguro.com. And then you'll see various aspects because I work with leaders as well as the business itself, so individual or group. And then in there, you'll find the Ohanapreneurs and the assessment as well.
Very nice. Very nice. Of course, a link to Sharon's website, the Ohanapreneur podcast, everything we're talking about today will be in the show notes at our website at saltmarketing.co. But Sharon, right now it is time for our lightning round questions. These are a few quick questions I like to ask of every guest. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
All right. First question is, what's something about you that often surprises people?
Do you want the PC answer or the...
We're among friends.
So I'll start it in the nice way. So something that always surprises people about me is I played women's rugby in college. And so the fun, two truths and a lie game, I always say, well, I'm a hooker because in rugby, there's a position called the hooker, which is
very nice.
Literally the one in the middle that kicks the ball back. So I played women's rugby, and it shows in a lot of the drive that I have for what I do. But actually the rugby culture it's fun because after the game, you go and have a beer with your friends. So
very nice. I never would have guessed that your physical stature does not lend itself to rugby.
Yeah, so 5'0". Yep.
I love that. All right, next question. What's your favorite thing about the work that you do?
It is breaking cycles. It's helping people see beyond what their circumstances allowed them to even know it was possible.
Very nice. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's only integration. I learned this from a general manager at Waldorf Astoria in Hawaii that I worked under. And yeah, we were talking about all the things that we needed to do. And he's like, there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's just how do you integrate everything that's happening in your life?
Yes, that makes sense. All right, last question. Who's inspiring you right now? What podcast you're listening to? What's the best book you've read recently?
Oh, too many answers to that. So the most recent podcast I listened to was Worth Your Salt.
Thank you for that plug.
Yeah, absolutely. The most recent, absolutely. And what is someone I love following is for growth of my mind is Roland Frazier. He is M&A, which means mergers and acquisition expert. He's also very much about giving and integrity. So he actually advises 8-figure business owners on acquiring businesses with no money out of pocket. But when we're on calls with him, he's literally in the chat answering questions, and no question is too small. And that impressed me with someone at that level.
Yes, his generosity with his brilliance is remarkable. It truly is. Yeah, I agree with that right there. Sharon, thank you so much for joining me on this week's episode of Worth Your Salt.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Yeah, for sure. I also want to thank you, Salt Nation. Mahalo. If you have a great success story, I would love to talk with you and share your story. So tell us why you're worth your salt by emailing us at grow@saltmarketing.co. Of course, be sure to subscribe to Worth Your Salt so you never miss an episode. Finally, leave us a review or give the show a handful of stars wherever you get your content. That's all for this episode of Worth Your Salt. Be sure to join me again next time. In the meantime, let's get out there and shake things up.